philosophy has got to be. I mean, you think Sean Payton took this job, and I read your piece that's on denversports.com about all the anonymous sources, and one of the quotes was he didn't like Russ from the jump, right?
That was ESPN's Jeremy Fowler who got that quote from.
I don't know why you take the job then. I mean, he had other suitors, and if you didn't love it, then why come here? Because to me, well, right now, if you're not going first-round quarterback, what is the solution? I'm just as intrigued as everybody else in the city to find out who's going to be your answer at quarterback next year. Because for me, as a fan, growing up here, rooting for this team, I'm at the point now where, like, I want them to give me a reason to root for them again. And I don't know how long that's going to be to where they're actually competitive in this league where you're like, dude, they have a good shot to make a run at the postseason. Maybe this is the best one they've had since Peyton Manning left, and we're going to have to wait another 5 to 7 years before we get it. Because if you go first-round quarterback, there's no saying they're going to come out and be C.J. Stroud first year.
It could be Bryce Young.
Exactly. And all we keep hearing about is the depleted talent on this roster, and you're going to bring in a first-round quarterback to try and rectify that? It doesn't add up. What's your philosophy for it?
Well, it's interesting you say that because the stat that has kind of been floating around is that of the 8 QBs left, we're in the Elite 8 for the NFL, the quarterfinals, whatever you want to call it, divisional round this weekend. 7 of the 8 were first-round picks. And then you got Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, right?
Right.
But it just kind of shows you to me that the path forward in this league, specifically with this league getting younger and faster and stronger, is a mobile, young first-round quarterback. That's who a lot of these guys are. I still consider Lamar Jackson young. I still consider Patrick Mahomes relatively young. And we know C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love are young.
Right.
So what I look at it as, Cello, and I told this to Zach and Phil on the drive, not only do they have to take a QB at 12, have to, they got to explore all possible avenues to move up. That's what the first round of the playoffs taught me, that it's not just, sit there at 12 and maybe it's Penix or maybe it's Nix or maybe it's McCarthy. No. Go get to 5 or 4 or in a perfect world 1 if Chicago's open for business and go make Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels a Denver Bronco. Those are the 3 names I want. Maybe some of those are more realistic than others. But I think that's the path forward, Cello. You have to go find your own C.J. Stroud. And I know, like you said, that doesn't always happen. But you got to be willing to roll the dice, or you're stuck in purgatory winning 7-8 games for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, I don't know that philosophy fits for me when I watch Sean. And the way that he's come in here and kind of taken the reins for the Denver Broncos organization, I don't see that. Do you see him as like a rebuild guy? I don't. What quarterback has he ever groomed?
He hasn't, and it's a fair and valid question, but I got to ask you this then. Why did he take the job if he always knew he was going to run Russ out of town, unless he knew rebuild was an option?
Because maybe there's a veteran out there that he has eyes for. I don't know.
Dude, his veteran last offseason was Stidham, who made me want to fall asleep in the 2 games he
No, but we're talking
started.
about higher level now. You guys were talking about Kirk Cousins about half an hour ago. I mean, I don't know that I hate that decision. I know it's not a long-term answer, but if it were me going forward, I'd say, man, I would take him to be my bridge quarterback and be competitive in the same stance, and then draft one of those quarterbacks to actually groom them up so you can see like something like where Jordan Love had time to kind of learn things along the way. And even at the beginning of this year, he's not what he is now. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, but Kirk Cousins is fantasy land. I mean, how are you going to afford Kirk Cousins first and foremost? I mean, he can say all he wants. He's made a lot of money in his career. He's willing to take less. You got $80 million in dead cap, maybe 1 year, probably spread out over 2 years. Unless Kirk Cousins is willing to pay for the veteran minimum, Shelly, you can have all the money in the world. It's pretty hard to say, yeah, I'll go play in Denver for $1 million when someone else is offering you $25 million.
Okay.
That's just human instinct.
All right, I'll go along with your philosophy, all right? And we draft a first-round quarterback. Have to have it. Courtland Sutton's already said goodbye.
He did. He posted that on Instagram on Friday. Well, it looked like a goodbye. We don't know for sure, but it looked that way.
We constantly hear about how depleted this roster is as far as talent goes. So you're going to bring in a first-round quarterback, possibly a top 5, top 10 pick, and then you're going to surround him with what? In the AFC West that, I don't know, does Jim Harbaugh end up in L.A.? And if he does, how good is that team for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years?
They'd probably reach their potential finally, because we've been hearing about potential, but obviously we know that Brandon Staley was just a terrible head coach.
We can't seem to beat the frickin' Raiders.
Nope.
So that's a problem. And then we beat the Chiefs for the first time in how many years?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question because I'll tell you what I told Phil and that he was all upset about. Then you go 2-15, dude. And that's just the way it is. But guess what? You go 2-15 with Jayden Daniels, and Jayden Daniels gets 17 games of very valuable experience under his belt. And then in year 2, you go 8-9, and then in year 3, you go 12-5. You follow the Detroit Lions arc with Dan Campbell. We've all seen the record with Campbell his first year, his second year, and his third year. They're now in the Elite Eight. Like that's just how this is going to build.
Was.
Right. It was Jared Goff, but Jared Goff was kicked to the curb in Los Angeles.
I know, but he was never terrible. He wasn't even terrible when he was in L.A.
Right, but like Josh Allen in Buffalo, I think got 12 starts his first year and went something like 4-8.
Yeah.
And then look at the arc he's taken off. I don't think going 2-15 next year.
Do you see Sean Payton here for that tenure?
I don't really care about Sean Payton anymore. Like that's the thing. It was a mistake to hire Sean Payton because if you always knew Sean wasn't going to work with Russ, yet your GM, George Payton, who still has a job, gave him $250 million.
Which is mind-numbing, is it not?
It's mind-numbing. Then why did you hire Sean Payton? I understand Jim Harbaugh was choice 1. I understand D'Amico Ryans was choice 2. Maybe the Walton Penner family ownership group should have passed up choice 3 and gone to choice 4 if it was this clear Sean never wanted to work with him. But it sounds like what you're telling me, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so I want to hear this.
Yeah.
That you don't want to go 2-15 with Jayden Daniels next year. That just is not a path for you. That is a path for me. Unfortunately, as morbid as that sounds on January 17th, sitting through a whole another awful football season, I really think you got to rebuild, rock bottom, tear it down to the studs before this thing gets bad.
Dude, after reading your article today on denversports.com, I'm more and more like, swallow your damn pride, bring Russ back. Now he has another year in your system. And try and make it work. Although all we've heard all along about Russ is that here's the problem I have with it, because you're almost making him sound like he's unintelligent. He couldn't handle Sean Payton's offense, and that they had to run something so elementary just for him to be even mildly successful what he was this year. Challenge the guy. I mean, if you changed your offense and went so elementary, then that's just another, arrow in the quiver that, hey, I never wanted this guy here. And you know what's funny is that we did the show before the season started, and I said, do you think he's going to torpedo the thing? And I almost said it jokingly. But now looking back on it, it's like once they got to where they had a chance to legitimately make the postseason, I saw you tweet out the other day the same thing. It's like they beat how many playoff teams?
Out of the final 8 left, they've beaten 3 of the 8. They've beaten the Packers, they've beaten the Chiefs, they've beaten the Bills, and they had 3 chances from inside the 10 to beat the Texans.
Exactly. So, I mean, how far off were you really? I mean, you come back in that New England game, and I know Russ gets a lot of flack for that New England game, but we gave them 7 points in that game. Not
Correct.
We, the Broncos. Sorry about that.
Specifically Marvin Mims.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they fight back. They tie the game. We get the ball back. And what is the call? 2 halfback screens?
Yeah.
I mean, go down and take advantage of the opportunity. You shouldn't have been back in the game at that point anyways.
No, it was a miracle comeback, down 23-7. All hope looked dead. And then you're right. They get the football back, tied at 23. Russ can't do anything. I don't think it was Russ's fault. I agree with you. And then Sean makes the mistake. Bill Belichick's willing to go to overtime. Sean gets greedy, calls his timeouts. Pat Surtain gets beaten down the left sideline. And then the Patriots kicker, who looked like he couldn't hit a 30-yarder, all of a sudden drills a 56-yarder.
Yeah, that was not a good start to Christmas.
No, that wasn't a good sequence. But okay, so my plan, do everything in your power to get to the top 5, draft Jayden Daniels. If you go 2-15, you go 2-15. It is what it is.
If you can get one of those top 3 that you're talking about, I'm on board. I don't care what the record is next year. I don't know how that's feasible.
It's a lot of picks, and it's Pat Surtain. I mean, Carolina got from 9-1, a lot of picks, and DJ Moore. So if you can get from 9-1, DJ Moore and a lot of picks, you can get 12-5, Pat Surtain and a lot of picks.
And then we're rolling with Jayden Daniels and the replacements.
2-15. But you said something interesting. You said at this point, swallow your pride and bring back Russ.
Yeah.
Is that realistic?
It's not going to happen. No.
Okay.
No, it's not going to happen. No way. I mean, the writing was on the wall when they made the decision to put him on the bench. I mean, that was it. Actually, to be honest with you, I think the last time we did the show was after the Detroit game. That's when the writing was on the wall. When he lost his cool, that's when it was over.
Okay, so I just wanted your thoughts on that because it was interesting watching the playoffs this weekend, right? And we had a great, 2 games Saturday, 2 games Sunday, 2 games Monday, which, by the way, they should do that moving forward. That worked out.
Oh, yeah.
That worked out. They got, kind of fell into it with the weather in Buffalo situation, but they should do that moving forward. So let's talk about your biggest takeaways from the playoffs. And I was on with Chad Andrus on Monday, filling in with Chad for Zach and Phil. I did the drive from 2 to 6. And I told Chad this, and I want to hear your thoughts. watching those teams, specifically the ones who won, the playmakers they have, the Broncos don't have anything close. They don't have a Puka Nacua on this roster.
No.
He was a man in Detroit. I know they lost, but he was the reason they were in that game, and he actually got interfered with on third down.
Yep.
That's a different story for a different day.
And they should have went for it on fourth.
They should have.
Yep.
They don't even have a Romeo Dobbs who tore up Dallas. Heck, they don't have a Jake Ferguson, tight end who scored 3 touchdowns. My biggest takeaway from the playoffs, Cello, was just how far away the Broncos are. You watch these guys shine on this stage, could never imagine Jerry Jeudy having a performance like a lot of these guys had. I like Courtland Sutton. He had some great touchdown catches this year. Couldn't imagine him having a performance.
Doesn't that statement support Russ then, for him to be able to get them to where he was before he got benched?
It does. It does. But did you have the same gut reaction I did of like, oh my gosh, this is what playmakers on NFL playoff teams look like? That doesn't look anything like the Broncos team I watched for 18 weeks this season.
No, I mean, with the exception of the phenomenal year that Courtland Sutton had, and I know he had, separation isn't his big thing, and it's always been different ever since the injury, but I also noticed that all but one game they were just blowouts.
A lot of blowouts.
You know, it's funny. You hear John Harbaugh yesterday at his press conference say, hey, we're down to the final 8 teams. These are the best 8 teams in the league. No, they're not. This just happened to the teams that, got to run into the opponents that fit them best. The Houston game was a joke. That was a laugher. It was a good first quarter, maybe into the second quarter. Laugher.
Yeah, Joe
blowout.
Flacco remembered he was Joe Flacco. Back-to-back pick sixes.
Then you have Dallas just get blown out at home. Watch out for Green Bay. They don't care right now. They're going for the jugular.
Right.
The Miami game they're so depleted, and in that weather, there's no way they were going to compete in that game. I was surprised with Pittsburgh with their ability to come back and make that somewhat a game late, into the fourth quarter. Eventually, it ended up being a blowout.
Isn't that kind of classic Buffalo, though? That's the criticism of them. They can't put the foot on the throat. They always sort of let teams back into it more than they should. All right, so you mentioned the blowouts and maybe not the 8 best teams and maybe kind of NCAA tournament style in hoops of who's the hottest, not necessarily who's the best. We always see the Elite 8, and you got the 11 seed and the 12 seed and the 8 seed. And it doesn't feel like, oh, these are the 8 best teams. But let's talk again specifically about playmakers. And it just feels like the gap.
So
even the gap between the Broncos and Packers, the team they beat. If the Broncos played the Packers tomorrow, the Packers would win by 30.
I don't know if I'd go that far. They would probably win the game.
They were up 32 on Dallas with 6 minutes to go. And last time I checked, the Cowboys are better than the Broncos.
That's Dallas in the postseason.
Sure.
Talk about a more shocking, result than that one when they were so dominant at home all year. But I get so if you say we don't have that, then get ready to wait 5 to 7 years to see that. Because if you have to give up all this draft capital to go up and get the quarterback that you want, it's going to be a while before you find those guys, because I have zero confidence that the general manager is going to bring those players in. Where have we seen them? If this was John Elway in the very same situation right now, he would be being roasted. And for some reason, nobody seems to care that our general manager has made some pretty poor decisions, and his job security is steel clad.
Yeah, I mean, I've screamed about it time and time again, but the people who matter the most don't seem to care, and that's the decision makers over at Dove Valley. They're willing to give George Payton a 17th chance. So yeah, I guess Broncos country should
I heard
too.
Stink this morning say, "Oh, he, George was out of his element, and now he can go back to just scouting." Well, then be a scout.
Right. Don't be a GM.
If you're going to be a GM, these are the problems that you have to run into.
To answer your question though, how do they get there? Okay, I'll just play a little devil's advocate. Puka Nacua was a 5th-round pick and just broke the rookie record for receiving yards. So how do they get the playmakers? You got to hit on the draft picks. And to your point, the current GM hits on about half his draft picks, maybe a little less, and then messes up all the big decisions in historically bad ways. So just to say, oh, well, they'll be 5 to 7 years away. That's what you said. Well, if you draft Puka Nacua in the 5th round, you won't be 5 to 7 years away. A lot of people thought the Rams were going to win 3-4 games this year. Rams were a playoff team that very easily could be playing this weekend. It can happen quick.
And I'll agree with you there. You can find those guys, the playmakers. It's much easier to find those in a draft and doing your due diligence, through your scouting department and whatnot. The ultimate question is you got to have, and you see it even in New England with Bill Belichick. Once Brady was gone, if you do not have that alpha playing quarterback for you and know that, you're going to have it for years, you're going to struggle in this league, and it's going to be It's like you said, it's NFL purgatory. If you have even an average quarterback, it's just get on the right again. You're doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, then it sounds like you're coming around to my line of thinking that they've got to
If you can
mortgage
get
the
one
farm.
of those, yeah. If you can, I told you, if you get one of those three guys, I'm on board.
All right, so you would trade almost everything, and that's a little hyperbolic, but you would trade Surtain and a boatload of draft picks for either Williams, Bay, or Daniels.
Yes,
I would too. Maybe not Drake May just because I don't like him as much, but that's just a me opinion. He's clearly thought of highly in the NFL world.
Yeah.
He's going to be a top 2 pick, most likely. But when I listen to Zach and Phil on my way in today, and it's not Zach and Phil's fault, they're just passing along the information and reacting to it. But when they've got guys out there saying, hey, who would be a good fit in Denver is Mason Rudolph. Really? We did this with Joe Flacco.
dude, I'd take Drew Lock instead.
Yeah, we did this with Case Keenum. We did it with Teddy Bridgewater. Why are we recycling veterans?
You know who else would be a good fit if we're going along that route? And I like Taylor Heineke. The dude has plenty of experience. He's energizing. He's fun to watch play, but he's never going to get you where you want to go.
Do you know a good way to make dozens and dozens of people attend training camp next year? Have a competition between Taylor Heineke and Jarrett Stidham. We think that hill's been empty a few times. And
talk about get in line for your tickets now, folks.
You don't need to. You can show up day of.
You want to know what the best case scenario would be, Will, is they need to have history repeat itself, and they need to find Rich Gannon, this generation's Rich Gannon.
Refresh me on Rich. Where did he go?
He was a career backup. I
Okay.
think he was in Minnesota, Kansas City, and he always got to play. It was kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick. For whatever reason, wherever he was, the starting quarterback would get hurt, and he had a lot of reps. Then when he went to Oakland, it kind of turned around. He was there with Gruden and then with Bill Callahan, and he was an NFL MVP, man. They took that team to the Super. They got trounced in the Super Bowl by the Bucs, but and the dude was phenomenal for probably about a 4 or 5 year stretch.
But can you tell me with a straight face that Taylor Heineke or Mason Rudolph is the next Rich Gannon?
No. The only one I could even foresee even being similar to that would be Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, but Kirk's resume is already so much better than a career backup's resume.
Yeah, but he's never been touted as like one of the NFL elites. When you talk about elite quarterbacks, even now, even in the best years he's had, he's never even in the top 5.
Right, but Kirk's also in his mid-30s. He's running out of time. I'd be much more tempted. Like, if we're going to toss names like that, I'd be much more tempted to go throw a little bit of money at Baker.
What about Dak?
Again, the money makes it trickier with Dak, whereas Baker, you could maybe do another
The money's their problem. I mean, to be honest, they put themselves in that position. The money's going to be, they're going to have a problem with the money no matter how you slice it.
Well, let's be clear. George put him in that position.
Yeah.
And then George was one of the 3 men given a microphone last week.
Yep.
Again, just mind-numbing stuff. I'll try to stop harping on it, but it's crazy to me. But you look at Baker, okay? And you mentioned Dak. I want to get into Dak in a second. You look at Baker. He's still only 28 years old. Is there a temptation that Baker can be your Rich Gannon? Because to me, that makes more sense than 35-year-old Kirk Cousins. Like 28-year-old Baker, he's still playing. Baker's still got a game on Saturday afternoon.
The dude's 2-1 in the postseason.
Or it might be Sunday afternoon. Whatever day they play Detroit. So if we're talking Baker or Kirk or Rudolph or Heineke, Baker's number 1.
Who's more
for
likely
me.
to stay where they're at now?
Well, Baker wants another payday. Kirk has gone on record saying he doesn't need the payday.
So he's wants to stay in Minnesota.
I would think so. His family's there. I don't know if you watch Quarterback on Netflix. It seems like he's pretty comfortable there.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, he's got a guy named Justin Jefferson. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Just like Baker's got a guy named Mike Evans. That doesn't hurt.
I think him and Kevin O'Connell got a good thing going on there.
Right.
To be honest with you, down in Tampa, I think they're falling more and more in love with Baker.
Oh, they'd look bad.
I think mid-season they were like ready to let it go. They were going to have to find another answer. But look at the way he finished the season.
The Bucs would look very bad if they let Baker get away this offseason. Yeah, you don't let Elite 8 quarterbacks get away. You just don't. If a guy takes you that far, other than Tim Tebow, when you signed Peyton Manning, you got to bring him back. You mentioned Dak. We have some breaking news in the last 45 minutes or so from our 104.3 The Fan Insider, ESPN Adam Schefter. This shocked me, but Schefter's reporting it. The Cowboys are going to retain Mike McCarthy. They're not going to fire him. That one is catching a lot of people off guard. We're reacting to this in real time, but it does feel like if they're keeping McCarthy, I want your thoughts on keeping McCarthy.
Dak's not going anywhere.
Oh, see, I think it's the opposite.
Really?
I think there's always going to be a scapegoat for a loss like that. And if McCarthy's not going to be the scapegoat, then maybe Dak is. You and I have two different lines of thinking on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's coming back, Dak's coming back.
But why would Jerry run it back? That's not Jerry's style. When Jerry
exactly.
says
Maybe he's trying to bump his own trend. I have no idea. After that game, listen, I listened to Dan Orlovsky the day after say everybody needed to go. Dak, Mike, Dan Quinn, they're all gone.
I think this kind of strengthens my point, though, that if Jerry's willing to run it back with Mike, maybe a divorce is coming up with Dak because someone's got to pay the price for that kind of loss. So realistically, could the Broncos get in the Dak Prescott sweepstakes? I don't know.
Then Dan Quinn's probably your scapegoat, even though he'll probably be interviewed for other head coaching positions.
I think Dan Quinn's going to land in Seattle. That would be my gut, that he gets that job up there. Scale of 1 to 10, what would your interest level be on Dak?
Oh, I'd take him here.
Mine would be about a 9.
Yes.
In a heartbeat.
Yep.
He'd be the best quarterback they've had since Peyton Manning retired, and it wouldn't be close.
And may have been the Broncos quarterback had he not missed a flight all those years ago when he was supposed to be in here for his workout.
They took Paxton Lynch over Dak Prescott.
Oh.
A decision that has haunted the franchise for years and years.
What's that guy doing now?
Paxton?
Yeah.
Probably on the Xbox. He was good at that when he was with the Broncos. I just think if you want to sell it to this fan base that you're going to keep George Payton, and frankly, you're going to keep Sean Payton, then you need to do something splashy at QB. The easiest thing to do splashy at QB, trade up in the draft, get a guy who hopefully can be here the next 15 years. The second easiest, go get a guy like Dak, or even Kirk, or even Baker, but don't make this fan base suffer through Mason Rudolph, or Ryan Tannehill, or Taylor Heineke. I mean, come on.
They'll start to see, if you make a decision like that, and you remember what happened at the end of the McDaniels era.
Empty seats.
59-14 to the Raiders, and the stadium was half empty by halftime. I mean, Jason Campbell, I call him the Commodore because he looks like Lionel Richie dancing on the ceiling, but he put up like 50 points in the first half. You go and make a decision like that with an uninspiring player at that position, well, they'll start to see it in the stands. They'll start to see it everywhere. The interest level, you're at a point right now where if I'm saying it right now, I know there's many people that are probably past this that we're looking for. I'm sick of just wanting and hoping for my team to be back to where it was. And that's just being competitive, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And Greg Penner says they're as impatient as we are. All right. I've been very complimentary of Greg Penner. I'll take him at his word. He's got to prove he's the owner who's just as impatient as the fan base is. Coming up on the other side, there was a huge battle in Philly last night. Joel Embiid won his Super Bowl. We'll react to it next.